Most people don't realize the moment they lose their power because it happens quietly. It happens when someone belittles you, and before you even respond, something inside you shrinks just a little. A comment masked as a joke, a dismissive tone, a look that suggests superiority. In that instant, your body reacts before your mind does. Your chest tightens. Your thoughts speed up. Your ego urges you to defend yourself. And this is where power is usually surrendered, not because of the insult itself, but because of how quickly people react to it. What you do in the seconds after being belittled determines whether you hand your authority away or quietly reclaim it. Belittling is not about truth, it is about control. When someone talks down to you, minimizes your thoughts, mocks your confidence, or subtly questions your worth, they are not revealing who you are. They are revealing who they feel threatened by. Belittling is often a defensive act from someone who feels smaller in your presence, even if they appear confident on the surface. The mistake many people make is assuming they must correct the insult or prove themselves. But power does not come from defending your worth. It comes from knowing it so deeply that it does not require explanation. Before you speak, react, or even shift your posture, the most important response happens internally. You must pause, not to hesitate, but to anchor. A pause interrupts the emotional hijack. It gives you control over your nervous system instead of letting the other person steer it. When someone belittles you, they are often testing boundaries, consciously or unconsciously. Your calm pause sends a signal stronger than any comeback. You are not shaken, and you do not need to rush to prove yourself. Silence in that moment is not weakness. It is composure gathering itself. When you react emotionally, defensiveness, sarcasm, anger, over-explaining, you feed the very dynamic the belittler seeks. Emotional reactions tell them they reached you. They gain validation even if you win the argument. Many people confuse speaking loudly with speaking powerfully, but the truth is this: the person who stays regulated controls the interaction. When you respond from emotion, you lower yourself into their frame. When you respond from grounded clarity, you force them to rise or retreat. Here is the reframe that changes everything. Being belittled is not an emergency, it is information. It tells you where someone's insecurity lives, where their respect ends, and where your boundaries must begin. Once you stop seeing belittling as an attack and start seeing it as a signal, you stop internalizing it. You no longer ask why they said that to you. You ask what it reveals about them and how you choose to respond from strength. This mental shift alone dissolves the sting. The goal is not to dominate the moment, embarrass the other person, or deliver the perfect line. The goal is to leave the interaction with your dignity intact and your self-respect untouched. When you master this first internal response, pause, regulate, observe, you prepare yourself for responses that are precise, controlled, and impossible to twist against you. When someone belittles you, the instinctive urge is to fire back with a clever comeback, a sharp correction, or a defensive explanation. This is where many people think strength lives, but it doesn't. Most comebacks are emotional reactions disguised as confidence. They often sound strong in your head, but in reality they escalate the situation and hand control back to the belittler. The moment you rush to respond, you signal that their words moved you. True power is not about being the loudest or wittiest. It's about being the most grounded person in the room. Neutral language is one of the most underestimated tools of self-respect. When you respond calmly without sarcasm or emotional charge, you strip the belittling comment of its fuel. Neutral language does not attack, defend, or explain. It clarifies. A simple, steady response such as "that's not how I see it" or "let's keep this respectful" forces the other person to confront their behavior without giving them drama to feed on. The calmness in your voice communicates authority far more than aggression ever could. Length weakens authority. When you over-explain, you unintentionally invite debate. Short responses, on the other hand, end the exchange on your terms. A brief pause followed by a concise statement signals certainty. Phrases like "I don't agree" or "that comment isn't necessary" draw a clear boundary without hostility. You are not asking permission to be respected, you are stating an expectation. This approach often unsettles belittlers because they expect resistance, not composure. Your tone carries more power than the sentence itself. A calm, steady tone communicates confidence even when your words are minimal. If your voice remains level and unhurried, the message is unmistakable. You are in control of yourself and therefore the interaction. Belittlers often rely on provoking emotional shifts, raised voices, nervous laughter, defensive explanations. When none of that appears, their tactic collapses. Silence combined with steady eye contact can be more disarming than any verbal response. Sometimes the most powerful response is no response at all. Silence, when intentional, is not avoidance, it's refusal to engage in disrespect, refusal to descend into unnecessary conflict. When you choose silence, you deny the belittler the reaction they seek. This only works when your silence is confident, not withdrawn. Your posture remains open, your expression calm, your presence unshaken. In that moment, silence becomes a mirror, forcing them to sit with their own behavior. Speaking without losing power means choosing clarity over emotion and restraint over reaction. You are not there to win an argument, you are there to protect your dignity. Once you master calm, concise responses, the next step is knowing when to draw a firmer boundary and when to disengage completely. When you begin setting boundaries with people who belittle you, expect resistance. Not because your boundary is unreasonable, but because it disrupts a dynamic they benefited from. Belittling thrives where access is unchecked. The moment you calmly state what you will and will not tolerate, you shift the balance of power. Some people mistake boundaries for aggression simply because they were never meant to hear the word no from you. Understanding this prevents you from backing down out of guilt. A boundary is about your behavior, not controlling theirs. This distinction is critical. You are not threatening consequences, you are stating standards. If the conversation continues this way, I'm stepping away. Is not an ultimatum, it's clarity. Ultimatums demand compliance. Boundaries declare self-respect. When you frame your response around your actions rather than their flaws, you remain grounded and unattackable. One of the biggest mistakes people make is over-explaining their boundaries. Explanation invites debate invites manipulation. You do not owe anyone a detailed justification for your self-respect. A boundary spoken once, clearly and calmly, is enough. Repeating it weakens it. When you say, I'm not okay with being spoken to like that, and stop talking, you leave no room for twisting your words. Your body often speaks before your mouth does. When setting boundaries, your posture matters. Stand or sit upright. Keep your shoulders relaxed, but open. Avoid fidgeting or nervous gestures. Maintain natural eye contact, not a stare, not avoidance. This physical steadiness reinforces the seriousness of your words. People who belittle often test how far they can go. Your composed body language tells them the line is real. Some people respond to boundaries with sarcasm, laughter, or dismissal. This is not confidence, it's discomfort. When this happens, resist the urge to argue. Instead, calmly repeat the boundary once more, unchanged. Repetition without emotion sends a powerful message. This is not a negotiation. If the behavior continues, follow through with your stated action. Leave, disengage, or change the subject. Consistency teaches others how to treat you. Setting boundaries is not about changing people, it's about choosing yourself. Each time you enforce a boundary calmly, you reinforce your own self-trust. You show yourself that your peace matters more than approval. Belittling from strangers is easier to dismiss, but when it comes from people close to you, family, long-term friends, co-workers, or authority figures, it cuts deeper. That's because these are people whose opinions once mattered or still do. Their words carry emotional history, shared memories, and unspoken expectations. When they belittle you, it doesn't just feel like disrespect. It feels like betrayal. Belittling from close people is rarely a one-time event. It often appears as a pattern, jokes at your expense, constant correction, subtle comparisons, or dismissing your achievements. Many tolerate this behavior longer than they should, because it's how they've always been. But longevity does not justify disrespect. When you recognize the pattern instead of focusing on individual comments, you gain clarity. When belittling comes from someone close, your response doesn't need to be harsh, to be firm. Calm honesty is far more effective than confrontation. A statement like, "When you speak to me that way, it's not helpful," delivered without accusation, shifts the conversation without escalating it. Some people respond to boundaries with guilt. "You're too sensitive," "I was just joking," or "You've changed." These phrases are designed to pull you back into compliance. Growth often makes others uncomfortable, especially those who benefited from your silence. You do not need to defend your evolution. Not all relationships are meant to come with unlimited access. When belittling continues despite clear communication, distance becomes a form of self-care, not punishment. Distance creates space for clarity. It allows you to protect your energy while observing whether the person respects the new limits or resents them. Emotional detachment is often misunderstood as indifference or emotional shutdown, but true detachment is clarity. It is the ability to remain present without absorbing what does not belong to you. You hear the words, but they no longer define you. Belittling only has power when it attaches itself to your self-concept. Detachment begins when you consciously separate who you are